Hello and welcome back to the Artful Coder. In our previous video, we covered some of the basics of object-oriented programming, and this video is designed to cover off a bit more of those original topics. So I've started with a simple project. Just to recap, it's modeling in the real world, flats, houses, and you've got an abstract class of buildings. We don't want instances of this. And then we simply show two different ways of initializing objects. So remember, class is like the plans to a house, but the actual objects is the implementation of those plans. So we've got two ways here. So that's using setting the properties. Then we've got the shorthand way. Then we just call a method, a method of each, open door, and they both do different things depending on if you're a house or a flat. And it might be that when they bark or say hello in animals, one might bark and one might meow. So when they say hello. So what I want to cover as well is interfaces. So an interface is like a contract saying that if you use this interface, then this is what it kind of adheres to. So we'll just go to our course. So build a bit of a project up. So let's just click in here. We'll create a new folder called interfaces. And what do we want an interface for? And this is a good question because do we want one for building? So if we've got an abstract class, each class must have those elements to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a fictitious interface. And what I mean by that is we're not going to do it directly on our core classes. We're going to create an interface that we want to do something else than that. So what we do is you go into here, add new item, and this is let's saying there's two ways of adding. It's got a class. So this is confusing because in certain versions, you do new item, it just give me a class, which we can do it this way. It's just that it sets a few things up. So let's call this. What should we call this? So this wants to be. Let's call this visitor. Okay, so visitor. And then we're going to open this up. And it says let's design it as an interface. And also, it's good to get in the hand of naming your model so you know what the other interface is. So, interface is just you put an I in front of it. Build class is just as classes are. So, an interface is like contract into this. So, what would a visitor have? So, so it's suggesting that what we do is we have visit. So we're going to create a public function void visit, but we're not passing an instance the same class in. We're just going to do that. So what this means is now, if I wanted to visit a building, then I would probably bring extra functionality in to show what the implementation of that is. So interface, think of it as like a class, so you structure with no implementation detail defined. So you're just saying here, so visitor might be public void park up. So what's part of this? So let's have this as a private. Let's have a look. Void park up. Okay. I do not like that. Okay, it's not like it because you can't have it that way. Okay, so let's create a public then. Okay, so we know that when somebody comes to our property, they're going to do one or two things. Let's just focus on a house. So if we then say, so what we can say is we want I visit. This isn't probably the strictest real world way to do it, but I'm trying to keep it simple. So do we apply this on the building? And then if we just copy that out. So we haven't got an access to it. So we know we've got an interface, but because it lives in a different coding area, we're just going to call OOP models dot core dot interfaces fish. And it's going to complain because of the pure fact that we don't implement. So if this is a contract, if a building has visitors, then it needs to implement these methods. So what are those methods? So let's do this. Let's do this and see what happens. So what do we have with a visit? So public. No. I see what we're going to do. We're just different. So we're going to have two methods. So private void visit. And it's going to try to suggest we visit a building, but we're not going to do that. We can do it passing zoom. Okay. So, so we can't implement this because it's saying about it being public. Okay. And again, they have to be public and abstract class access them. Void. Oh, what do we call it? Parker. Okay. So, what we've got now is we're saying re-implement his interface. So we just want to define some function, say what it kind of does, and that's what we've got here. So in theory now, if we go into our flat, yeah, we should now be able to actually, that's kind of saying that if you use our interface, this is what you must include. So what we're going to do now is when they arrive at the building, so this might happen before we open the door, or it might happen as part of it. So what we can do now as well is we could say, well, we can call this. So we can say park up, and we can say visit. But we may not want to, in the flat, do something different. So again, this is where you can start looking at how things can vary. So let's say, for example, that they visited on a flat, but they didn't park up. Suppose it's somewhere congested like London. So if we just save that and go back to our house, this time, let's say park and visit. Okay. And what does it do when we're parking up? So with the house, people park up, walk up to the door and visit. And again, that might entail different things depending on what you're doing. So for example, in the abstract class, this might be, if we call this one, it might have some default behavior in there. So let's just show how this works. So what I want to do is in the flat, let's create our own version of this visit. Public, no, private, because we don't want it as accessible. It's void visit. So it's either going to complain because it's not. Okay. So we're going to override this. So console dot write line, and I want to say I am visiting my friend's flat. Okay. And in here, this is just simple console. So console dot write line. We're going to say I have visited my friend, my friend's residence. Put there. And again, park up We're not including the flats. We're overriding here. We're having our own version. And then again, so if we go to console.write line, I have parked down the road. And it's kind of like steps road. And again, in programming, it's logical steps and equations, etc. So ask yourself the question. This is what I got asked to do at college and uni. Write down, get a piece of pen and paper, not on a computer, and write down all of the steps that are involved in making a cup of tea. So, for example, you might go to the cupboard, get a mug. You might then put water in the kettle, place mug on counter, wait for kettle to boil, add sugar. It's literally logically breaking that down. So let's have a look what we've got. We're calling that over bit here, and we're going to just have that I visit my friend's residence. So let's just see what we get if this works. Because it should still technically work with an interface and all the other bits. Here we go. Okay, so you can see here that we're falling back on that. We use an interface to say that we want a visitor. It's not strictly true because you wouldn't have visitor interface of it. It's just an example. So we can see here, so you can see from the code that we're having overwrites down here. I park down the road. I visit my friend's residence. That's from the building class. And the flat is I'm visiting my friend's flat. Again, you can see this output in here. So again, this is starting to kind of build up our little application, if you like. And again, it's quite good. I mean, we've got these bits here. That's interfaces. So an interface is like a contract saying that. And it's good for dependency injection. So I'm going to mention dependency injection. Dependency injection is a way of injecting things in. So it's loosely coupled. It means loosely coupled. So it means in theory, you can swap the definition out for a class, use that interface, and it should still work. By that, I mean that this interface here, visit, on one class, this could have a void method called visit. And again, we're kind of doing that because on our building, we're saying in the top level building, this is our implementation of that interface method visit. And we're just outputting the console bit in flat. We're doing it again there. So these are two different, what they call versions of implementation of that interface. So we know that if we could have other functions in here that are part of the flat that could be don't let the cat out. And again, we've created so we can in theory pass things in as well. For example, you can then say, well, we'll pass in interfaces and it would just kind of works, and it's good for dependency injection, and that's where you do it these days because it took me a long while to get my head around interfaces. Thought, well, what are they? But it's just a class with methods declared in a sense, but no implementation. You don't start writing code in here. This is just saying that each building has these extra bits of functionality, and again, in interface you can define properties. So it's kind of to use interface. What must I implement? Just simple as that. It's like an extra bit of structure to a class, and it might be that you're trying to write code for somebody or some project and you kind of want all that consistency together. So that's another video on interfaces, a bit more object-oriented programming. Next, we might look at other bits and pieces as well, just to go over those. But I hope you've enjoyed this video, and yeah, please keep tuned for more videos. Thank you so much.